This episode of the Unload and Show Clear podcast is made possible by our patrons, Jesse Walker, Jonathan Wolf, Scott Martin, and Frank DeCastro. Thank you so much for your support. To find out how you can support the show, visit unloadpodcast.com/patrons.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear. And now, here's your host, the slayer of non-threats, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, episode number 154. I am your host, Lloyd Bailey, the slayer of non-threats. Great to be back, relaunching the show after a long hiatus. If you have no idea that if you had no idea that we've been gone, or you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to episode number 153 from a couple of weeks ago. I explain everything that's been going on and why the show was gone for essentially 17 weeks. This is a show about the men and women of IDPA, the everyday people who make this sport what it is, who volunteer their time, their money, their hard work to improve their skills, grow the sport, putting on local and sanctioned matches all across the country. And today, we start by looking back at the month of October as we wrap up an awesome month of shooting and introduce you to a new guest as well. And we'll, I don't think we're going to share, I think what I'm going to start doing at the end of the show is sharing a tip of the week. But I think instead will be, because there's so much that happened in October, I think we're going to look ahead to upcoming matches instead. October was super busy for the IDPA world because all the matches that got canceled or postponed in March and April all got pushed to October. It's been typically October is kind of a slow month. And November as well, but it looks to me like everybody decided that those spring matches that COVID caused us to cancel all got rescheduled for right here in October. And we still got, I think, 4 matches to go in November. So very busy fall season for IDPA. October started out with, the Lake County and the Maryland State IDPA Championships. The Lake County Championship was in Tavares, Florida, and ESP Master Gorka Ibanez from Pompano Beach was the division champion and best overall time, beating the next closest competitor by 15 seconds. And the next closest was a master in carry optics. So Mr. Ibanez was clearly flying with that ESP gun. Ross Quarnocchio, and I apologize if I mispronounce any names from here forward, from Sorrento, Florida, was the carry optics champion. Carl Utzler was the champion in CCP. Mark Few topped the CDP leaderboard. Alan Davis of Live Oak, Florida, was the revolver champion, and marksman Lloyd Cornelius from Ormond Beach earned himself a bump to sharpshooter by beating a dozen sharpshooters and an expert along the way to the SSP title. In Maryland, the carry optics guys were at the top of the leaderboard. There wasn't a high-flying ESP master to jump out ahead of them. Eric Chesney and Eric, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Eric of Newport News, Virginia, posted the best time and division championship with a final score of 191. Daryl Swiggett from New Carrollton, Maryland, won the CCP title. Michael Haskin won the CDP title. Robert Dunleavy, father of former guest Leon Dunleavy, won the ESP title. And you can check out Leon's interview back in episode number 55. Gene Gelberger from Stowe, Massachusetts, came down to Virginia, took home the revolver title in a field of 9 wheel gun shooters. Nice to see so many revolver shooters in a match. And Eidos Bekturganov from McLean, Virginia, was the SSP division champion. The next weekend, those two matches happened the same weekend on the weekend of the 1st. The next weekend saw 2 more matches, one in my former home state, one in my current home state here in Texas, at the first ever Texas Guardians Championship in Longview. Matt Smith won the PCC title by 25 seconds. The Carry Optics champion wasn't far behind, as sharpshooter Dan Beal, clearly sandbagging, won the division at 190.35. So he was only about just under 40 seconds behind the PCC shooter, topping 2 masters, 8 experts, and getting himself a much-deserved bump to expert. Scott Blank posted the fastest time in CDP, and it was the fastest time in the 8-round capacity divisions, faster even than the best time in SSP, in fact. Jeff Slaga took home the CCP crown. Justin Shields of Midlothian, Texas, won the ESP title. Jack Davis won the Revolver division, and Kyle Fender from Pollock, Texas, won the always crowded SSP division title. The Range in Oxford, North Carolina, that same weekend hosted the Carolina Cup. It's a match it's the first match I ever saw a video of, in fact. It's the one that gave me got me the juices going, got me interested in IDPA all those years ago. And I've always wanted to attend, but now here I am in Texas, and so it would be quite a bit of travel to get back there, but maybe someday. James Jones of Chesapeake, Virginia, won the PCC title. Eric Chesney, following up on his Carry Optics win in Maryland, took home the Carry Optics Championship here as well, finishing just 5 seconds shy of the PCC score, so a nice fast time for him. Former guest Todd Barber from Wilmington won the CCP division by a wide margin, and you can hear my interview with Todd back in episode number 130. Travis Lynn Barfield won the CDP title. Not a whole lot of CDP shooters. I'm noticing a trend in going through all these scores, and I suspect it's the ammo shortage. If I'm wrong on that, correct me. But we're seeing small fields of CDP shooters close, in some matches, close to what the turnout of revolver shooters, which is quite surprising. That's what this ammo shortage is doing to us, I think. Virginia's Mark Carter won the ESP title, and Chris Donovan of Roxborough, North Carolina, won the SSP crown. Nathan Holland and Travis Coffey battled for the Revolver trophy, and Holland took away the top spot. The match I really wanted to return to this year, the Holiday Havoc, was in Evansville, Indiana this month, and I want to give a big shout out to Jay Heil and all the people at the Holiday Havoc. I really wanted to get out there to shoot the match this year, and was really very, very touched that they decided to send me a shooter's jersey anyway, even though I wasn't able to make it. They put the Unload and Show Clear logo on the back of the jersey. I really do appreciate that. And so come hell or high water, I will be at the 2021 Holiday Havoc, that's for sure. It was just an awesome, fun match. I had hoped to get back, but then 2020 happened. But you can check out the YouTube videos from last year's match that I posted on the channel. Dan Obradovich won the PCC title at the Holiday Havoc. 2 former guests battled it out for the Carry Optics crown. Brandon Jackson edged out Kevin Farrar for the title. And you can check out my interviews with Brandon back in episode 135 and with Kevin all the way back in episode 30. Another guest, Distinguished Master Bradley Edens, won the CCP title. No real surprise there. Brad's time was 8th overall and was the fastest among the iron sight shooters. You can check out my interview with Bradley way, way back in episode 24. Nathan Yeager won the CDP division in a very small field again. David Burke from Alton, Illinois, won the ESP crown. Sean Upchurch won the revolver division in what looked like was a spirited battle with runner-up Scott Fish, and another former guest, Jeff Nelson, took home the division win in SSP, edging out expert Jason Brown and another guest, Brad Hebner, by just over 4 seconds. Be sure to check out my interview with Jeff Nelson in episode 94 and Brad Hebner back in episode 117. All right, there are still scores to report, but I'm going to save that for some time this week for my guest. And we got a comment on what's coming up at the end of the month. Some really cool matches that we'll be talking about in our next episode. There's a bug match out in New Mexico, the Liberty match in Pennsylvania, Arizona State's Pistol Championship, the Georgia State Championship, which I had hoped to attend, and another of my all-time favorite matches, the Fall Brawl in Arkansas, and a really cool, I think, first of its kind, correct me if I'm wrong here, all-women's match. The Southern Belle IDPA Championship was held in Blue Springs, Mississippi, and I had hoped to go cover that. Wasn't able to, of course, but hope that it looks like the match went well, and I'm hoping I can get out there and see it next year. Okay, congratulations to all the winners I mentioned, and it's time to meet this week's special guest. Our special guest is the match director of the 2020 Texas Guardians IDPA Championship, Ben Petty from Bullard, Texas. Ben, welcome to the show. Great to finally get you here.
Thanks, Lloyd.
So for those who haven't had a chance to meet you, don't know you, tell us a little about yourself and what you do for a living there in Bullard.
Well, I've lived in Bullard, which is a small town in East Texas, most of my life, and my wife has lived here her entire life. And I do commercial IT work, so I work for a lot of dental offices and different things like that. And I used to be I was the first computer guy, I guess you would say, at for the school district. And I actually was teaching at the school, and they were going to hire a technology director, so they asked me to write the job description. Because I was the only one who knew anything about technology. So little did they know that I was going to apply for the job. So when they interviewed me, they were like, you're exactly what we're looking for. We have no idea what we're looking for.
Imagine
but you're exactly
that.
Yeah. So anyway, so I got that job. And I did that. I was the first technology director for the school district. And we, started with you can imagine we had no computers at all back then. And then I left about 5 years later to do my IT stuff, and we had maybe 300 or 400 computers, and I think they have maybe like 10 people that do that job in the district now. But anyway,
not a one-person job anymore.
No, it was actually became more of a not a one-person job while I was doing it too. So anyway, it was 300 computers was a lot to manage for one person.
Yes, absolutely. Having done that at one time for a semester in an elementary school system, that was not fun. How did you get interested in guns? You growing up or living most of your life in East Texas. What was the introduction to guns like?
Well, I have been around guns and shot my entire life. As far as rifles and stuff like that. I actually shot my first deer when I was 5 years old, which most people don't believe, but my dad had I still has it actually, it's a 222, and I was so small I couldn't get the gun on my shoulder. I think I had it either on top of my shoulder or under my arm or something, and so he just kind of put his hand behind the gun. Of course, that doesn't have much recoil anyway, but and I don't even know. I'd have to ask him what it was. It was probably a doe or something. But anyway, that was kind of my, like I said, I grew up around guns, and I didn't start getting involved in pistol shooting until maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. But I've kind of been around rifles and reloading for deer hunting and that kind of stuff my whole life. So.
Right. And so tell us about that introduction to handgun shooting. If you were a rifle shooter your whole life, and then 5 years ago, miraculously you come upon handguns. Had you had a whole lot of experience with handguns prior to that, or was it just, what was the introduction like?
Well, what's funny is I have. It reminds me of I don't know what the guy's name is, but there's a shooter that shoots IDPA, and he shoots like a full power 44 Magnum or something. It's like
oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Power factor. Yeah, so that would have been sort of my introduction to handguns. It's like the only handgun that I had was a Ruger Super Red Hawk 44 Magnum, and so I loaded, I reloaded for that and everything, and but obviously that's a completely different thing from what we do now. And so I don't know. I think I'm trying to remember how I started going to Lock and Load, which was an indoor shooting range in Tyler.
Right.
And they anyway, they have since gone out of business, but I think I helped them with some IT work. I know I did some work for all of the guys up there at one point or the next, and ended up having free memberships, I guess, for as long as they were open by doing that. And so, anyway, but Steve Prater, I think he's been on your show before.
Former guest, yeah.
And yeah, so he was my chrono guy at the Guardians match, and incredible, gunsmith and everything. And so I would go up there. I didn't know anything. I had seen people shooting fast with pistols, and I thought that would be cool. And so I've never really taken a class or anything. I just sort of, I guess, self-taught, and so some things are wrong. But anyway, but I would go up to Lock and Load all the time, and it was great. In the middle of the summer or it's raining, it doesn't matter, since it was an indoor range. And I just would practice drawing from the holster, and they were nice enough to let me do that, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And so, but that's kind of how I got started. And then Steve I would say that was probably like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And then Steve kept, telling me, hey, we got these IDPA matches, and you need to come check it out and everything. And I was resistant to it. I didn't feel like I was ready for it. I'm sure same experience like a lot of new shooters have.
Right.
And so I kept putting it off. And I finally went to a match. I don't think I slept a wink the night before, and so I didn't DQ myself. I think it was dead last. And, but I was pretty hooked on it at that point, I think. And, the next match was kind of the same thing. A lot of anxiety and stuff like that. And so by the time the third match rolled around, I was like, okay, this is too hard, and I want this to be fun. So if I can't convert this anxiety into fun somehow, then I got to go do something else. And so the third match, I slept great the night before, and I just had a ton of fun, and I shot, of course, better than I did the other two matches. And so that's kind of sort of become my thing, is to try to, make it just like I'm just there for fun, even if I'm at a large match or whatever. And I just tend to shoot better that way.
Right. So what was, so after those first few worrisome matches, how long before you felt comfortable enough to try a sanction match?
It was a while. Some of the guys were telling me about, cause I shot the classifier, and I had done enough practice on my own and everything. I was able to make marksman. And that was back under the 90 round deal or whatever.
Right.
And, classifier. And so, I didn't know any better. So I didn't know I was supposed to go to sanction matches and win stuff and match bump and all that kind of stuff. So I just shot local matches for a little while, and then I felt like I could make sharpshooter, so I shot the classifier and made sharpshooter. So I never shot a sanction match until I was a sharpshooter. and I'm trying to remember the first one I shot. It might have been silver dollar. I think it actually was silver dollar.
Okay.
And I was like, next to last in my class or something like that.
If you started out in sharpshooter, that's
yeah. Well, everybody kept telling me things like match bumps. I had no idea what that meant, and I was like, that sounds really hard when I can just sit here and shoot the classifier again or whatever.
right.
But anyway, but silver dollar was a great match to get my feet wet, because it tends to be kind of a, just a fun, closer in kind of match. And so, I just remember, just like everybody, hey, I didn't DQ myself, so that's a win.
Right.
So,
I don't remember where we first met. I think it was at a match in Crescent. And I guess you were a sharpshooter. I know I hadn't made sharpshooter yet, but you were clearly sandbagging. You have gone on since then to become a master in ESP and SSP and CCP, and expert in several others. What did it take to go from where you started, worrying about local matches, to becoming a master class shooter?
Well, I would say two things, and one of these is probably going to be something that you edit out so that people don't yell at you. But anyway, so the first one I kind of already hinted around. I saw so many people that have so much anxiety when they come to a match, and I struggle with that. I kind of grew up. My family, my mom is a little bit anxious about things, I guess, and so I kind of grew up with that, and so it was hard for me to kind of get away from that. But shooting has been so great for me in that area, because like I used to, I would get super anxious if I was going to pray at church or something like that, pray in front of people or that kind of thing. And just shooting and trying to put that aside and just have fun has really helped in other aspects of my life as far as the anxiety goes. So I would say that's part of it. Obviously, you still have to have the skill too, but a lot of times people, when they get to a match, they don't perform what they're capable of doing because of the anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a bigger part of shooting than people want to admit to, because it's like you don't want to say that you were nervous or whatever. So
right.
So there's that. And then the other thing was, and this kind of goes back to teaching myself and not knowing what I was doing, but I have become a big believer in target focused shooting, and which it's like it's like sacrilegious to say that, but anyway, I just when I was shooting,
let's just rustle the jimmies, all the jimmies we can here. Let's go ahead.
Yeah. So this is the part you want to cut out. But anyway, so at lock and load, I would just I just over and over and over I would draw and shoot at targets at 7 yards or whatever, and so I kind of told myself one day, it seems like if I could just look at the target and draw and fire and hit the target, then I can't think of a way to shoot any faster than that.
Right.
And so anyway, I started practicing. Now this was just flat out point shooting at this point. I'm not using the sights at all. And, I would be way low left and stuff like that. And so, but I just kept practicing that over and over again. And I got to where, because I didn't want to aim high right to make the shots hit. I wanted it to be a natural thing.
Right.
And it took a while, but they started, moving up towards center. And so I got pretty good at point shooting. And so I started playing around with the target focus. I can, if I use that, I can actually, see my hits in real time better. And on longer shots, it's kind of crazy. It depends on the sun sometimes, but I can actually see the bullets in flight. And even if I can't see my hits, it's sort of like seeing tracers going into a target. I'm talking about like at 20 yards or something like that.
Right.
And so I actually use it for any distance. And it's how I've taught my son and other people how to shoot too. And like I say, everybody, it's front sight focus,
right?
Or you're from the devil, But all I know is it works for me. And of course, you got to keep in mind, I shot IDPA for several years, and then we were shooting a local match one time, and I had my cover garment off, and this guy was like, "Your bullets are backwards in my mag holster." He was like, you're got your bullets pointing backwards. They're supposed to be pointing towards the front. Well, I didn't know. I just had taught myself to do it the other way, and so
Whatever works.
yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, Caleb, my son is 16, and he's been shooting for about 3 years, and he's right on the cusp of bumping to master. I mean, he beats me at local matches sometimes, and so. But anyway, like I say, I don't know. I just know that works for me, and it's a fun way to shoot. I mean, I've always said, like, if I focus on the front sight, then the target is blurry.
Mm-hmm.
And if I, heaven forbid, I'm ever in a real situation where, something's happening and I've got to use my gun, I want to be able to see that. I want to be able to see that in focus, whatever's happening downrange. And so, anyway, like I say, you can edit all this part out, but that's just that works for me, and I'm able to get good accuracy with it too. I mean, I tend to be, more towards the accurate side, I guess.
Mm.
And so,
that strategy makes sense in relation to concealed carry, like you were talking about. And the sport is based on concealed carry. And in a real life situation, like you were talking about, you're not going to press all the way out and focus on the front sight before you snap off a shot. So your shooting technique sounds a little more realistic. What's the key for someone who's just learning and who's thinking about integrating IDPA into their concealed carry practice? What's the key to doing the target focus shooting well? I mean, obviously you have to use your sights to some degree, but how much?
Oh no, and see, that's the thing that I think confuses people, is that I'm definitely using the sights. Now, if it's 7 yards or under, a lot of times I don't ever see the sights. If there's a tight non-threat, then maybe. But and another analogy that I've used before too is, like, if I'm driving a car and I see a wreck happening sort of in slow motion in front of me, I'm not going to be like, quick, focus on something on the windshield. Focus on a bug on the windshield, and then I'm looking at something that's that close, and then the wreck is taking place in front of me. I need to be looking at the car, so maybe I can dodge or whatever.
Right.
And so, but anyway, the way that it works for me is, I mean, you'll see two images originally. You'll see two guns and sights and everything, and it's kind of strange because everything is translucent. Your gun is see-through because you're looking kind of around it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still see the front sight just fine, but it's going to be blurry.
Okay.
So that may bother some people, but after you practice a little bit, you'll get to where you don't even notice the second image. And so I'm still lining the sights up, especially, I'm shooting at 20 yards or whatever. I can't do that point shooting very well at all, but it's just sort of like the gun is floating in front of me and is see-through, I guess would be the best way to say it. And so I never could figure out how to keep both eyes open and focus on the front sight without the target being horribly blurry,
right.
Or there being two targets, for example. And so anyway, and like I say, it takes a little bit of practice to figure that out, and but it is a fun way to shoot because I'm actually looking at what I want to shoot, and and then hopefully the bullets go there. And so I'm using the same technique regardless of distance. If it's like under 10 yards, I would say, then I'm still using the same technique, but I'm not really caring about the sights.
Right.
But I'm pointing the gun exactly the same way. And I keep both eyes wide open. In fact, sometimes when I'm teaching people, I'll say, I make them do big eyes, is what I call it. So, force your eyes wide open. And in other words, to get to the point where you don't even blink when you fire a shot,
Right.
and you can just see your hits so much better. I know you're not supposed to see your hits and all that kind of thing, but if we're being honest, that's part of shooting IDPA.
Right. It's the googly eyes shooting technique, right?
Yes. Go for the big eyes. That's what you want.
Well, in recent years, you have become you were the assistant match director for the Rose City Championship in Tyler, Texas, and this year you were the match director for the first ever Texas Guardians IDPA Championship at the East Texas Rifle and Pistol Club. Tell us a little about how that match came about and how that transition from just shooter to assistant match director to match director happened.
Well, I'm going to self-check myself into a mental facility, and anybody that hosts a sanctioned match can relate, I think, because something is wrong with you if you decide to do that. But anyway, I really love the sport, and I thought that at Rose City we did a 8 or 9 stage match in a single bay, which is crazy. That's a whole nother deal with Samuel Chambers coming to me and telling me, hey, he wants to have local matches there. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. There's no way you can have 6 stages in one bay. He's like, oh yeah, well, you can do all this. And I mean, he masterminded that thing out. And so, and then he comes to me and tells me he wants to have a sanctioned match. And I'm like, there's no way they're not going to let you do that or whatever. But it was, I think it was a really good success. I mean, everybody was,
it worked.
Everybody liked it. We had different squads coming at different times of the day and stuff like that. So anyway, East Texas Rifle and Pistol Club currently has 5 bays that we were able to use. And so we did it more like, I guess, sort of more like the national model at Talladega, where they had, 2 stages in each bay.
Right.
We had a couple of stages that were reversible or shot in a different way. But anyway, I don't know. I just kind of, I think my buddy Scott Blank and I were coming back from a match. He and I and Caleb shoot a lot together, and we were coming back from a match and just kind of high off of going to that particular match, and we're like, hey, we could have a sanctioned match or whatever. And I don't know, it just kind of grew out of that, and I was humble. I mean, and of course, the original dates for it were like April 14th through the 16th or something like that, which I think was like literally the peak of when they were having the most deaths and everything from coronavirus. And so, it was that was kind of a disaster, and a lot of other matches had that same thing. But yep. I was really humbled because I had maybe at that point in April already had like 140 shooters signed up, which was incredible because I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of hoping to get to 90 or something like that.
Right.
And so then we have to move it, and I mean, it was so close to when it was going to be. I mean, I've got trophies and guns and a bunch of stuff I've already spent money on, and so I just ask everybody, if you can, just leave your money here, and then we'll just bump it to October. And I only had like 10 people that like had scheduling conflicts or whatever, and so we ended up with we had 155 shooters registered, and then I think we had 144 that actually shot the match. And so
nice.
But it was a good time. I think most people were real happy, and it went real smooth. So
where did the idea to dedicate the match to military and law enforcement, first responders, where did that idea come from?
Well, I've always kind of had a place in my heart for that kind of, the people that dedicate their lives to that kind of thing. And, one of my good friends, Derek Ham, who was actually, if you see any of pictures of people getting their trophies. He's the one handing their trophies. But anyway, he's in my small group at church and is a retired Delta Force guy, and just in other words, dedicating his life to military service has taken a toll in other areas of his life, and
Right.
and so it's amazing to see the sacrifice there, and I see that with the police and EMS and stuff like that too. And then I didn't know, all this crazy stuff about defund the police and we hate the police and all that kind of stuff started actually coming in after we had already planned the match, which made it even more relevant, I felt. And so I just kind of wanted to do something special for those guys, and so guys and girls. And so anyway, I think we did a good job of honoring them at the match. So
very good. So did you design all the stages?
No, and that's kind of interesting deal too. I didn't want to have a match that sort of you could kind of figure out, or like it kind of all feels the same a little bit or whatever. So we started out from the beginning. So it had 4 guys actually. So it was me, and then my son Caleb, who is an expert, and then Scott Blank, who's a master shooter, and then Mark Thompson, who's also a master shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And so each person had maybe about give or take 3 stages that they were going to, I'm like, give me your best stuff,
Right.
And so anyway, and I think you kind of got a feel for that when you shot the match too. The other thing is that all of us were shooting different divisions. And so I didn't want it to be like, oh man, this stinks for CCP or this stinks for whatever, and so we tried to do the best we could on that. And we had several stages where there's a bunch of different ways to shoot that stage. And if you were CCP, you would shoot it. You might have 2 or 3 different options. And then if you're ESP, it would be different, but we tried to make it where there was a natural reload available somewhere on most of the stages. And so, but by having 4 different people do it, I think it really kind of gave a different feel for it, and so anyway, and then Mark Thompson and Scott Blank were going to be my assistant match directors. And then if you're an Office fan, Caleb was going to be the assistant to the match director. So anyway, and Mark had some medical issues and had to drop out right there towards the end. But he's doing better, and he had 3 or 4 phenomenal stages that were in the match. And so,
well, tell us about your favorite. Which one was your favorite from the match?
Well, my favorite is going to be one of my stages, obviously.
Of course.
Anyway, my favorite was the lawnmower stage. I like the boat stage a lot. I spent a lot of time getting that thing to where the boat stage was a John boat that is mounted on bungee straps, and intentionally have targets that are out to the right or out to the left and kind of force you to have to shake the boat a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And but to get that to where it was unstable, but not like I'm fixing to fall out of the boat, I spent a lot of time working on that to get it to where it was safe, but just a little bit unstable. And we did have one target on that I've never seen before, and I did terrible on it. Of course, you design a new moving target and then I can't shoot it. But anyway, but it was a steel with a paper target about 3 yards behind it, and you can't see to shoot the paper target because the popper is blocking it. And then when the steel falls, it hits a cable and causes that target to fall forward, and it is very fast. We had a marksman that got 3 on it, and I in the match I actually only got one hit on it. But anyway, my favorite stage was still the lawnmower stage, and we worked pretty hard on that one. That one had a on the left side of the stage there was an up down, And when you activated, you pushed over a popper to activate that up down. When that up down went up, it tripped a cable all the way across on the other side of the stage and tripped a drop turner. And so, which sounds kind of evil, but it was a really fun stage.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and made it a double drop turner just so people didn't freak out. But it was a lot of fun, and that one was a good example of a stage where you would shoot it differently if you were shooting CCP or ESP. There was a long range target that you could go ahead and shoot from the start position if you're shooting ESP, and then you had a natural reload running down the hallway. And if you're shooting 8-round division, you would leave that target, and then there was another point of cover that you could engage that from closer in. So, but that stage I spent a lot of time on, and it was a lot of fun. But that and the boat stage were probably my two favorites.
That sounds cool. I love stages with props. So
yeah, yeah, and see, like Mark Thompson, he's done a lot of matches before, and so he's not a big prop guy just because of a cable breaks or something goes wrong or whatever, and so his stages were more just straightforward, but a lot of run and gun kind of stuff, and then I'm more of a Caleb and I like the props more, and so I think we had, I can't remember, we had about half of them had moving targets. Some of them had multiple moving targets in a stage. So anyway, but it was a good mix. So
nice. Now you've been shooting a lot of CCP lately? Yeah,
I started when I first started. I shot ESP, and the only gun that I had, or the only competition type gun that I had, was just a Glock 19.
Mm-hmm.
And so I shot that in ESP for a long time, I think all the way through expert and stuff. And then I started getting a little bit more serious. So I went ahead and bought a 34 and then, made master with that. And so I have kind of gone back to my roots a little bit, because I really, the Glock 19 just fits in my hand really well. And I really enjoy shooting it. So Caleb and I have been shooting it most of the year this year, and we shot it at the World Championship last year too.
Nice. So. What is it, as we kind of wrap things up here, what is it about this sport that you like so much? You talked about how you were kind of anxious and nervous about shooting matches early on, and how you felt like if this isn't going to make my anxiety ratchet up to 10, then I need to find something else to do. What is it about IDPA that made you decide you wanted to overcome that hurdle and then keep on doing it to the point that you're not only a master class shooter at this point, but also running major matches? What is it about this sport that's so special?
I mean, this sounds cliche probably, but the true answer for me is just the people. I mean,
how did I know you would say that?
Did you know I was going to say that? I love shooting I love shooting, obviously. I mean, that's such a stress relief for me. And so that's something I love to do, obviously, but what has kept me going and made me want to do stuff like the Guardians match and everything is the people. And I have made so many friends through IDPA, and it's funny because some of these guys were there at Lock and Load at my first match, and watch me, mess up and stuff. I mean, David Cundiff was one of my safety officers at the Guardians match, and I remember he was the first safety officer to run me at Lock and Load, and he said, are you ready? And I'm kind of getting myself together, and then I hear a beep, and I'm like, I didn't say anything, I'm not ready or whatever. And so, I had a very awkward first start of my first stage there.
Welcome to IDPA.
Yeah. So he very nicely said, oh, okay, fine. Well, So that was my one time. If I got a beep, I got a score. They let me out of that one on my very first stage. But anyway, but I just, you know, like I say, some of the best people I've ever met, and some of my best friends today are people that I've met through IDPA. I mean, and that's true in multiple cases. And like the Guardians match, I mean, there's no way I could have. That was one of the mistakes that I made, is trying to do too much of the match by myself in the beginning. I just you know, I'm trying to do all of the coordination and stuff like that at the beginning of the match, and I had to actually kind of rely on some of these guys a lot harder once it came to where we're putting everything together and setting stages up and stuff like that. And so I mean, again, cliche, but there's no way I could have done it without some of these guys. I mean, there's a guy named Bill Perkins who we were joking around, lived at the range for the entire week of the match, because I mean, he was there every day helping with and just tons of other people. People stayed late. They tore down stuff without me even asking, and you know, too many people to name. But I just you know, that's a humbling experience to see that. And like I say, a guy you probably know is, do you know Gene Simmons?
Yep.
Panama. Yeah.
Yep.
So one of Gene's favorite sayings is that, and I'll probably botch it, but his pistol match is a social event occasionally interrupted by guns. So, and that's kind of the way I look at it too. You know, I mean, in other words, I'm there as much to see my buddies as I am to shoot, and I think probably most people are the same on that. So.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's been great to spend a little time with you. We see each other from time to time at a match and pester one another, but I haven't gotten a chance to actually sit down and get to talk like this. Great to have you on the show, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Well, thanks, Lloyd. I appreciate it.
All right. That is going to do it for this week. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to our special guest for joining me today. Next week, or next episode, I'm going to have to get used to that. It's a show every 2 weeks. So the next episode number 155, we'll be talking about the Charity Bug match out of New Mexico, the Liberty match in Pennsylvania, the scores from Arizona State, Georgia State, the Fall Brawl, and the Southern Belle IDPA Championship. Congratulations again to all the winners, and thank you to all the staff who made all these awesome matches possible. And be sure to tune in next time. We are a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.